Ohio State Buckeye. Is that right? Is that what you are?
Michigan.
Oh, Michigan. Sorry. Sorry.
This is going south fast. That's all I'm saying.
So happy New Year, everyone. And I am delighted that we have with us as our guest today, John Tayer. I know that our president, Mike Brady, is saying, that's enough, Paul, keep it short. John Tayer doesn't need any introduction. So I will provide a little bit of background very quickly. John, you also came here from Brookline, Massachusetts.
That's right. I was interested to meet the character.
So prior to joining the Boulder Chamber, John was Public Affairs and Communications Director for the pharmaceutical manufacturing company Roche Colorado Corporation. He was Policy Director at the Boulder City Manager's Office. And he also spent 6 years as the Boulder area's elected representative to the Regional Transportation District. He did get his degree at Michigan, a few years on Capitol Hill, and then moved to Boulder 29 years ago to get a law degree at the University of Colorado. Lives in Boulder with his wife, Molly. And I think as John and I were talking about his joining us today, I think many of us, if not all of us, are so appreciative of the commercial vitality of our community, the variety and the growth and the energy. We're also asking ourselves a lot of questions about the changes that we see in Boulder, and I can think of no one better than John Tayer to share thoughts with us about that. Thank you, John.
Thanks,
very
Paul.
much.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to step out here, maybe move this a little bit so I got some elbow room. But I am just so honored to be here today. People might know that I don't usually wear a coat, but I wanted to make sure to display my 100th anniversary pin prominently for all of you, as representing an organization that also has a long tradition of history in our community. So I celebrate along with you all the great work that the Boulder Rotary has done in our community and all of the information that you are all absorbing in these types of presentations. Hopefully mine is equal to the ones that you hear from others, great presenters. And I know the great committee that invited me to join you. I thank them for this honor. So what we are going to talk to today about is this economic picture for Boulder. And I'm going to speak in terms of short-term and long-term perspective. That's how we look at it at the Boulder Chamber. We try to take on issues as they come to us as immediate response to needs of businesses, but we're also at the same time always looking out long-term, trying to think, how do we make sure that our economy sustains and is vital for the long-term future? So let's just review where we are in this overall picture for the Boulder economy. And just think about these three things. We're big, we're diverse, and we are innovative. So what do I mean by that? First of all, we are a big economy. We're still a relatively small town, only 100,000. But how unique it is that Boulder is privileged to have one job for every person in our community, 100,000 jobs, rough estimate. That brings us great benefit. It's absolutely unique when you compare it to other communities. For say, Denver, they have about one job for every two people. So that is a comparative for a relatively large community. We are, if you thought, compared us to other suburbs, no one would stand close to us in terms of that proportion. And that brings us, as you know, great benefits in terms of tax resources, in terms of jobs, et cetera. Diversity. We are, you think about other communities, they would be pleased to have a regional shopping center and say that is the foundation of their economic health. Other communities maybe think about a corporate town that has one select business or industry. Boulder is privileged to have a diversity of industries where we have great strength that is unparalleled relative to other communities across the country. Aerospace, biotech, natural products, outdoor industry, tourism, IT sector. All of those are great strengths of our economy and help to position us strongly whenever we face those ups and downs in the economy. That's something that we're very privileged to have. And then finally, we are innovative. There's undisputed that we are a startup capital. In fact, a few years ago, Inc. magazine recognized us as the startup capital of the United States. I don't know if we hold that exact title, but when you compare us to other communities where you have startup businesses activity where new enterprises are beginning and growing into then sustaining long-term vital businesses, we are unique in our ability to generate that and compare favorably to communities like Silicon Valley, like Boston, like Austin. And that is a great driving force for us to continue to sustain economic vitality across those diverse industry sectors. So as the emoji says, I go, yes, we are right in there. Strong economy, what's not to love about Boulder, right? And that sustaining, that economic vitality continues when we look back at the year that we just had, 2018. We had some significant new arrivals of some of these banner businesses that are course icons in the business community. Amazon located a office here. Apple recently announced their plans to move an office and expand. But we also had a number of businesses expand their businesses here. Zayo, one of them, but then so many of them, Ball Corporation, et cetera, that are just continuing to see Boulder as a vital place to continue their business growth. And then in that startup vein, thinking about just that economic vitality that comes from entrepreneurship, who would have thought that this little gizmo that gets on the back of your phone would be the #2 fastest growing company in the United States of the top 5,000 in the country. Amazing to see the growth of that company and the success. And then there's other company, Lucky's Market. Started as a small grocery store, Bo and Trish Sharon along Broadway. They had no resources, they said. They just threw all their savings into it. And that has now grown to a national company, significant portion of it purchased by King Soopers, and they continue to grow, maintaining the Boulder character that made them so successful. So great continued success, not only in terms of great successful businesses that have grown and developed other places moving to Boulder, but then also that entrepreneurial spirit continuing to build in our community. So what's the economic outlook for 2019? Well, let me tell you, I have no idea. Okay, I'm just going to be very clear with you. I don't carry a crystal ball. I probably follow the same media resources that you do, but we pay very close attention to it at the Boulder Chamber. So where do I go? I go to some of the experts, and they're located right in our community. Richard Wobekind, I'm sure familiar to many of you. He's the head of economic research at the CU School of Business. He is saying that we will see continued growth in the economy across the state, about 2%. He's saying it's going to be broad-based and diverse, which is a good indication for a community like Boulder that's broad-based and diverse, that we will continue to see sustained economic growth. Here's my shameless pitch. He will tell us more, and including the local economy, at our economic forecast event, which is on January 17th. Always a sellout. I'd say get 20 tickets fast, just like Mike was encouraging me. But Richard will be giving us a lot deeper look at the details of the economic condition for 2019. But I did want to just hit on just what are the things that I say are, what's keeping me guessing. I also had this initially titled, What Keeps Me Up at Night, okay? So 3 things right here: trade wars, government shutdowns, development moratoriums. Trade wars. It can be so abstract what's happening on the national level, just the discussions and the battles and words of criticism, China, United States, the NAFTA or the trade disputes with Canada and Mexico. But they have real impacts on our local businesses. For example, just a local forge company that makes fences out of metal products, designer fences. They're telling me that the cost of steel has gone up 30% since the trade wars with China. And that is a significant bottom line expense for them. They can put it to some extent into the cost of their products, but that is painful for the folks who then they try to sell their products to. So all of that is having an impact on small businesses, but then think about the large businesses in Boulder that do international trade with businesses in China and back and forth. Those are things that are having right now impacts on businesses in our community. Government shutdowns. Again, could be abstract. You know, you think about, boy, I hate that the toilets aren't being cleaned in Rocky Mountain National Park. That has real impact on us. Our economy is built on a strong tourism industry. That was one of the original foundational businesses of this community. And you can be sure that there are fewer tourists coming through our town on the way to Rocky Mountain National Park when they hear that it's shut down and the services won't be there. That's a real impact to us. But then when you think about all the government entities that operate in Boulder, those are dollars that are not circulating through our economy while those folks are furloughed and hoping that they will get paid. And then there are the businesses that do business with government, that depend on the resources of government services to do their business. That's all being impacted through the government shutdown directly, but then also the foreshadowing of, you know, gee, when is, an uncertainty of when is this going to be over? So that has real impact to us, potentially keeps me guessing about the future. And then finally, just bringing it local. And I will leave time for questions and thoughts on some of these issues, but you know, there's clearly a discussion, dispute, disagreement about the direction for growth and redevelopment in our community. And right now, I would argue that this city council is leaning on the side of restrained growth, that they tend to be more inclined to control development of business activity that would involve any sort of redevelopment of facilities. So what we're dealing with right now is a number of moratoriums on commercial development. That is having a direct impact on small businesses that are thinking about their future, or even just starting a new business in Boulder. But even larger businesses are starting to question the long-term future of their redevelopment, of their expansion in Boulder, because they have to look out many years to do their planning, and they cannot have these moratoriums going forward, which leave them with uncertainty about the future. So that is a significant impact. It has some policy and political implications for sure, but that again is what keeps me guessing about the short-term future. But really, I'd say long-term, I'm with you, scratching my head, but I'm hearing good things about the short-term sense of 2019's economy continuing to be growing and strong. So what I did want to chat with you about is our effort to look forward and to take a more proactive approach to address the needs of our business community. And we call it, it's all under the rubric of a program we call Boulder Together. So where did Boulder Together come from? We did a great deal of outreach to the businesses in our community. A number of community leaders, brought them together in what we called think tanks, little group sessions, and then individual meetings with these community leaders to hear from them what they saw as the greatest hindrance or barriers to their business success. And what we heard was loud and clear. First of all, many of them said to us, listen, we just cannot be tied to the political winds of the policy leadership in this town. We need the business community itself to take action on some of the most critical issues that are important to our business success. So business leadership. And then they hit on some common themes around critical issues. So what were those? Fundamentally, it came down to an issue of talent access. I hear from so many businesses, it could be a restaurant, it is a computer IT company, it is a biotech company. They are having more and more challenge to recruiting and retaining the talent to fill the jobs that allow them to continue their business success. That's across the board. And the reasons for that are not probably mysteries to many of you, but they come down to three things. One is the housing issues, housing costs, affordability of housing. It's transportation mobility, the commutes for workers, and then the thought that we're just not making the best and most effective use of the talent that we have available. So I'm just going to hit on each of those really quickly. First of all, housing. I know there are some realtors. My friend Matt Jensen is a realtor. We printed a brochure for this program, Boulder Together, about 4 months ago or something like that. And it was the average price of a home was 1.2 million. Well, now I think it's like 1.4 million or something like that. It just keeps going up, and I can't keep printing brochures. It's becoming expensive. But that at those prices, it's clear that the housing in Boulder is unaffordable to so many of the diverse folks that we need to fill the jobs in our community. So we've got to address it, and we're going to do it in two ways. One, we're going to try and work to address or increase the amount of and diversity of housing in our community. There are so many places in our community where we can start to redevelop to look more like, I always say, we don't need to fight over Pearl Street. We need more Pearl Streets. We need more areas of our community that can look like the mixed use, walkable, livable spaces that have retail, have commercial, and have a diversity of housing that would appeal to our workforce. So when I think about 55th Street, where I used to work, I go, boy, that looks more like New Jersey than Boulder. Let's look at those areas for redevelopment of housing in our community. We can do that. We can also cut the cost of developing housing by increasing this or speeding up the development and review processes that are add to the underlying cost of housing. So we intend to get very serious about that at the local level, but we're also going to be engaged very actively in the regional discussion about housing, working with our colleagues in the other chamber organizations and business affiliates to help develop more housing in the trip shed around Boulder. We're not going to solve our housing needs in Boulder. We're going to have to look outside. So the closer we can keep that housing, the diversity of it, that allows us to then get workers who can live and work in Boulder closer to Boulder. So that's housing. Transportation. We know that when folks can't live in Boulder, then they need to commute into town. And right now there's an estimate. It ranges, some people say about 50,000 up to 60,000 individuals commuting to work in Boulder on a daily basis. And I often think, God, when I'm driving to Denver in the morning at like 7:30 or something, and I look at the traffic jam backed up to Broomfield, and I think, my God, I would never do that. You realize how difficult a decision it is for a prospective employee to think about working in our community. We need to improve the commute patterns and the commutes for the workers that come to jobs in our community. So I will tell you that we're going to do it in a couple of different ways. One is long-term, one is short-term. First, long-term. We have to continue to improve the major arteries into our community. That's Highway 52. That's the diagonal highway. That is the 93, and it is we need to continue to work to make US 36 an effective transportation corridor into our community. Now, we are big supporters of transit at the Boulder Chamber. I grew up with Charlie on the MTA, if anybody knows that song, in my ears in Brookline, Massachusetts. But we also know that 85% of people drive into Boulder, so we need to have a balanced investment in transportation coming into our community. So roadway improvements as well as transit. So that's the long term. But another thing that we heard from businesses is that they can't wait around for these kinds of investments. They have transportation issues right now. So we need to work with them to develop the efficient mobility mechanisms to get their employees from their homes to their place of work using the technology and systems that are available. So that means investments in final mile solutions from the end of transit. It shouldn't take a half hour to get from Longmont to Boulder on a bus and then another hour to get to your place of work at 55th Street. That should be an instantaneous transition. We need to do that better. In addition, it's amazing the technology that's available to improve things like carpooling or van pooling. We were talking to one company where they have partnered up with the Ford Motor Company. They can track how many people commute from, let's say, Loveland at 9:30 and then come to downtown Pearl Street on a daily basis. That's an excellent opportunity to bring a bunch of business leaders together, get their employees coordinated who are coming from Loveland and get them in a van pool that's not something that you fight with your sister in the back seat with, but very comfortable, IT enabled, et cetera, to make that a convenient commute. So short-term and long-term investments in our commute system. And then finally, it's the workforce. We have right now, it's something like, I think I forget what the statistic exactly, but it was like 2,000 jobs and like 100 people applying for those jobs. I mean, ridiculously low numbers of applicants for the positions available in our community. We need to address that. So how do we find that workforce? Well, there are a number of folks. Think about high school, think about the university, and also other populations that are looking for employment opportunities. So when a kid graduates from high school and they're thinking, college is not right for me, rather than necessarily, I need to go to the Army or go to Louisiana or something like that. No, there are such great career opportunities in our community. We can set them up with internships, apprenticeship programs, get them thinking early on about the opportunities for great careers that don't necessarily involve a college degree. The university, so many of the students that come to our university want to live and work in Boulder once they graduate. In fact, that's one of the officials at the university was telling me that's a great selling point for them, is that they can tell the parents who are paying for this enormous, somewhat costly education that, hey, we can guarantee or not guarantee, but there's great opportunities for employment in Boulder after school. That's something that we need to facilitate. So we want to create a direct pipeline between the university and our business community where it's one-stop shopping. The students know what jobs are available in our community. They know what training they might need to get those jobs. And they have apprenticeship and internship programs that might get them better connected right off the bat to be available for that. And similarly, the business community needs access to the university that is quick and easy for them. It shouldn't be that, I know a chemistry professor that I met at a cocktail party. He said he's got 2 students that I might get a job. No, it should be the businesses know where to go. It's one single pipeline of connection to the university student population. So that's with the university. And then finally, there is I don't know how many people went to the economic forecast last year and saw the state demographer. Listen to the state demographer. Well, she was talking about the unique position of Boulder as the focal point for our aging workforce. So many people moved here in the 1970s. They came here for their first jobs. And now they're starting to age in their workplace, and maybe their skills aren't as relevant to the jobs that are available today. Well, we can create the opportunities to upscale their talents, help them to be very effective and valuable contributors to our economy today. So that's an area of the population unique to Boulder, but something that we want to, through Boulder Together, to help facilitate. So that's the summary of it. I will tell you that we had a conversation at the board. This is a significant initiative for the Boulder Chamber. I thank many of you in the room who have contributed and had your businesses step up to support us and invest in this effort. But it was a question about, boys, this is a whole new line of activity for the Boulder Chamber. And we said, should we do this thing? And it wasn't a should we do it, it was a we have to do this. This is about the long-term future of the Boulder economy and ultimately the sustainability and vitality of our community. So unanimously, our board supported moving forward with this program, and you will learn and hear more about it in the coming year. So that's Boulder Together. That's the end of my presentation. So just to summarize, the Boulder Chamber is focused on the short-term activities. We're often responding to needs, policy issues that come at us that are affecting businesses now, but we also want to make sure that for the long term, for the next 100 years, that we are guaranteeing that we have a vital and strong economy that supports the community that we love. So that's my presentation. I'm going to open it up for questions, pointed criticism, whatever. So come at me. John.
John, in the past, we're the chair of the chamber. One of the things that always struck me great in our community is this belief that somehow as business is not good for the environment, or there's just this, if you're a business person, then you're not supporting the environment.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I don't know that I have a specific question about that other than to just have you address that, because it's so untrue.
It's so untrue. I mean, I hear that as well, John. So how do I respond to it? So a couple ways. One, there's no question that the business leadership of this community understands and appreciates the values that make this place such an attractive place to live and work. And so when we talk about advocating for business interests at the Boulder Chamber, but with the folks that we have at the table in our conversations, we always talk about representing business interests in harmony with the values that are important to our community. We know that the environment and a strong social safety net are critical to a strong economy, but vice versa, you cannot have a great environment, you can't have the open space protection, you can't have the strong social programs without a strong economy. So that's the way we approach it. And it's when I hear that criticism, I'm sure that it's based on perceptions of past practices of businesses. There's no excusing that. But I know that the businesses that I represent take a totally different approach and understand that cycle, that balance that we need to have.
John, question would be, when you're looking at this connection, this relationship with the Boulder City Council, the way in which some of the municipal leadership is looking to take the community, and the importance of the business community taking initiatives and being way more actively engaged in that, particularly with respect to housing. So you can look at something like the development of housing to create co-ops or to create way more flexibility in terms of the numbers of people and how they're residing in a property. And then you've got the regulations for what's required for them to be able to develop those properties and change those things. Do you have a plan or a suggestion or a recommendation or something that would expedite this process?
Yeah, I got a secret plan. I mean, this is an age-old issue for our community. I mean, you go back in time. Actually, very interesting. Dan Corson. Anybody know Dan Corson, former council member? He talks about the first work of the council that was created when we first became incorporated was to do planning in our community. Okay, so planning is an epic of our history in order to make sure that we maintain the high quality of life. And there's no question that we've seen many benefits from the thoughtful dialogue that we have in this community about redevelopment and other development issues. But I will argue that that pendulum swings sometimes in a negative way that undermines other community values. I'm getting the 2-minute warning, so I'm gonna be quick. Think about our social equity issues. Think about the environmental efficiency of greater density and development. All of those are goals that are espoused by the leadership of our community, but oftentimes their policies against development tend to work against that. So what is the strategy and approach? Well, first of all, and I will say that, listen, I have great friendships with the city council members. We have to work together. It's a small town, but we have to also be clear about the difference in perspective. And sometimes when that pendulum swings, as we're more clear and as we're honest in our approach, there's the broad consensus of the community starts to fall in line and recognize that maybe the pendulum needs to spill backwards. But a lot of work happens behind the scenes. And Boulder Together, for example, 90% of that will happen without the policy leadership support necessarily. We're going to look for that. It certainly happens faster with it. But those are things that we can do with city staff to improve development process. Those are things that we can do within the guidelines that currently exist. And to the extent that this is a regional effort, we don't even have to deal with the local political environment. We go outside of it. So for me, there's a number of different approaches. We don't get involved in direct political elections, but we certainly do speak up and are clear on the positions that are different and counter to what we think is the appropriate direction for the community.
I've got a question here. I grabbed the mic here. Retail is probably the sector that's under the most stress nationwide. And as you walk around Boulder or drive around Boulder, there seems to be a growing amount of empty retail space. Is this a trend or sampling error? And what's going on?
No, I think that we are susceptible to the trends that you're seeing across the country. First of all, there is the competition from online shopping. We also know that, listen, we are no longer the center of retail activity for the entire county. It used to be that if you lived in Lafayette, Erie, whatever, you came into Boulder to do your regular shopping. So that's part of the condition that we're facing. But we also know that many of the policies that have been supported in terms of regulations and fees, et cetera, are driving up rental costs for many of these retail outlets. That then also is contributing to some of them having to find other places in other communities to do their business. They work on very slim margins, these businesses. And when you make an adjustment like a linkage fee or the property taxes go up, that falls directly to the businesses that are in those stores. So what are we going to do about it? A couple things. One, I know that City Council is looking at this issue closely in terms of how can they protect some of that local service type shopping that we need, so we don't have to drive out of town to get our shoes shined. We're looking with them at how can we reduce those costs directly, how can we protect some business areas so that are supportive of small business retail. But the truth is that we are benefiting from the retail that often comes into this community that's not your standard shopping, et cetera. So we want to find those businesses, help make it appealing for them to move into town, to appeal to, for example, the tourists on Pearl Street Mall. You're not going to buy your groceries on Pearl Street Mall. We want to fill that shopping area with somebody that appeals to the customer base that goes through it. So the trends are impacting us, the national trends. There are some forced errors that I think are causing us some challenges with retail relocation. But third, I think there's some strategies that we can use collectively with our policy leaders to try to attract and retain some of those retail outlets.
Okay. John, I want to thank you for coming and joining us today for lunch.
Fine.
And in your honor, the Boulder Rotary Club is pleased to contribute 100 doses of vaccine to the Polio Plus Fund. After 26 years of arduous work, Rotary and its partners are on the brink of eradicating this tenacious disease, but a strong push is needed now to root it out once and for all. It is conceivable for polio to be eradicated in the next few years. It is a window of opportunity of historic proportions as we move forward in the polio endgame strategy.
Thank you, Carrie. I'll just say this, it got me very nervous when I saw the two DAs come up here and still walk by here. But it is such a great pleasure and honor for me to get time to spend with all of you. And I will tell you that I've said this to Mike, we are forces for good in this community, and I want to continue to build the partnership of our organizations as we address economic issues, which are community issues, and I know that all of you are committed to that. So I look forward to continuing the partnership and the relationship.